Morning all. You are requested to please put up your names and numbers for the purpose of your attendance. Please note and inform it to your friends also that the link to join the class will be turned off at 9:20. So they are requested to please join the class before that. And in our today's lecture, as yesterday we have completed the second unit, we'll be starting with a fresh unit, that is unit number 3. So what is there in your unit number 3? Let's see. Your unit 3 is about the money supply and central bank. What is money? You will keep on telling me that you have done this in 12th and that in 12th. So money is, I'm sure, this is the section that you must have covered. What is money? Yes, some of you have stated that it is a means of exchange and what is the other thing with the help of which you can, it's a measure of unit which helps in buying and selling of goods, the means of exchange for transactional purpose. Yes, all of these statements are apparently true. So first of all, let's look into the matter that what all we are gonna cover as the part of money. So we'll be going through the money meaning, the evolution, its definition, its function, demand of money, the quantity theory, the future situation of exchange, the Cambridge theory, supply of money, determinants of money supply, the components of money supply, and the Reserve Bank of India's approach towards M1, M2, M3, and M4. So this is what we are gonna cover in this particular unit. Let's start the unit with the meaning and evolution of money. Now, I asked you a very simple question. What is money? Now, the question is very simple. But are you aware that this term money is generally used for as a means of currency notes and coins? or something which is held in cash or check, or we can say checkable deposits with the banks. Everything is given the term money. So, what is money basically? Now, the answer to this question is different for different economists. So, the term is money, which was once used as the term of exchange, is nowadays having a very wider sense. And when we are trying to define it, in the perspectives of economists, also, money is defined differently by different economists. There's no one particular definition, there's no universally agreed definition to money because everyone is defining money in their own way. Like here we are having Walters. As per Walters, throughout the history to the present day, is stating that there is no particular agreement on the most fundamental question. And what is the most fundamental question? What is money? The definition on money is, if you try to define money, this is basically a controversial issue. We do not exactly know what money is. But even then, as we have a need to define everything, there's a certain economists who have defined money as money is what money does. That is the best definition they've turned up with. And if we talk about the conceptual relevance of money, then we can say that it can be defined as any commodity that is accepted or exchanged as a medium of exchange and as a medium of value. So that can be termed as money. See, whenever we are talking about money, historically this was not what money meant. Historically, money was not in the form of coins or notes. It was a means of exchange. There was nothing like money. There was barter system. There are many commodities which have performed these functions of money and forms of money. Moreover, the pattern or the visualization of this money has kept on changing. Once upon a time, the cattle was used as money, whereas in today's time, we're having credit cards. We're using the money which we don't even have. So nowadays, we are having these credit cards. The empirical question that arises is that what should be and what should not be included in the money. Now, what should be included, what should not be included? This is a question which is still complicated. Because a major factor which is complicating this task of defining the money is the increasing number of substitutes. We're having debit cards, we're having credit cards, we're having bitcoins, we're having. Oh, I'm sorry, there was some technical issue due to which my connection was not proper. Okay, I'll continue. Now, the major factor that complicates the task of defining the money is the increasing number of substitutes that we are having. Now, these substitutes are in the form of assets, in the form of cards, and they can easily be converted into spendable money. So the degree of convertibility is different, but they can easily be converted in the form of money whenever we want. Although currency is something which remains as the most liquid format of money, or the most liquid format of the asset which can be used for an exchange. But this is something which is followed by bank deposits. There are many other forms of money which have emerged over time, and even they are noted as money. The another factor which is adding up to the controversy, the definition of money by itself is very controversial. But there's something which always keeps on adding to this controversy, and that is the divergence between the conceptual and the empirical definition. There's a major difference between what we are actually using as money and what is defined as money. The result of this is the concept of money is changed for many times. Money is something which has changed its form from measurable to immeasurable quantity. We have defined money in so many ways that it is now changing its forms from measurable to immeasurable. Now, in order to understand that what all can be included in the money, we'll have to go through the different definitions of money or the different approaches that different people have used for money. There was a well-known economist named H.G. Johnson. What he has done is he has classified the approaches to the definition of money under four categories. That like everyone is giving their own definition. Everyone is telling that money is this, money is that. What this guy did was he categorized it under four different definitions. Now, four different approaches. Now, what were these approaches? These approaches were the conventional approach, the Chicago approach, the Gurley Shaw approach, and the central bank approach. These were the four main approaches under which the money is categorized. That someone or the other believed in something or the other, hence the classification took place. Now, so what we'll do is we'll go through these approaches one by one. What is stating what? The first one is the conventional definition. Now, this is the definition of money, which is, we can say this is the oldest definition of money. And moreover, this is one of the most widely accepted one also. Now, what does this emphasize, or what does this conventional definition focuses on? This basically focuses on the basic function of money. That is, that money is a medium of exchange and it measures the value. That is what this focuses on. And going by these functions, money can be defined as, again, what was stated earlier, that money is what money does. So, if we are taking the conceptual point of view, then any commodity that functions as a medium of exchange and as a measure to value something can be termed up as money. If a kg of grain can be used as a medium of exchange and as a measure of value, then even that is money. Like here we are, like if we look back into the history to find that which commodities were included as money, then there were cattle, we had food grains, at a point of time there were stones, then there were shells at certain places, um, then there were tobacco articles, metals, dried fish, leather, leather coins were made, coffee, tea. Now, these are the things which have served as a medium of exchange, already served, and they were a measure of the value. So now what were these things called? These things were basically called the commodity money because in different human civilizations and in different parts of the world, different things were getting exchanged for different things. So as a definition by itself is saying that anything that works as a medium of exchange or which can be measured as value is termed as money. So these were the sections of commodity money. But why we didn't continue with the sort of commodity money because it had certain problems. Commodity money was there, but if we are talking about today's standard, our pattern of exchange is very symmetrical, very standardized. So as for today's standards, this commodity money was something which lacked on many perspectives. That is, it lacked in uniformity. 1 kg rice is not equal to 1 kg wheat. We do not know what is that particular thing equal to at all. So there was no uniformity in the commodity money. There was no homogeneity in the commodity money. Then there was no standard size and weight that this much quantity or this sort of quality should be given. Then durability was a question. Storability was a question. Now if a person is having all sorts of items and he is not only having wheat, so he'll exchange everything for wheat. But where will he store wheat? And till how much time will he store? So this durability and storability was also a question. Then the probability that a person might be needing the product at all, that was also a question. Then the stability in value was again one big question for everything. That the product which is valued today may not be valued tomorrow. Kab kya hoga? You have already exchanged something for it. Now you cannot ask it back. Then the divisibility of that product from the from its value was also a big question, and thus the limitation to the commodity money. So these were the certain limitations that this commodity money had. Repeat again what all it lacked. It lacked uniformity, homogeneity, standardization, then durability, storability, portability, stability in value, and divisibility. It cannot be easily divided or separated. So owing to these problems, the other forms of money which have evolved over the given period of time or over the long period of time are metallic coins, paper currency, then the demand deposits, which are operated through checks. Now, these forms of money perform the basic function, and accordingly, the according to the conventional approach, there some or if we get the total of these things, that is metallic coins, paper currency, and demand deposits, we can constitute the sum of total supply of money in an economy. Now, the first two forms of money, that is metallic coins and paper currency, they are having certain different features. Whereas the third form of money is not having those features. Like you cannot exchange the demand draft for something or the demand deposits for any commodity, but you can exchange metallic coins and paper currency for anything you want. Now, who created these metallic coins and paper currency? It was the government, the central bank, and the legal tender in the sense of they enjoy a legal status in each and every country. So they are the ones who have created this paper currency and metallic coins. So the legal tender or coins and paper currency, they are not only accepted as a medium of exchange by each and everyone in a particular country, but they are also legally enforceable in order to settle the payment obligation. See, when we are talking about paper currency and coins, coins are not having anything written below them or above them. But if you are talking about paper currency, the Indian paper currency is having this oath that I am a that the owner or the receiver, There's something written under the note. What is it? Can anyone tell me? There is always something written under the note. What is it? No one? No one wants to tell that what is written under the note. Note देख के बता दो. If anyone is having a note in their pocket or somewhere around the laptop or phone, whatever you are using.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, it's written I promise to pay the bearer of
Uh,
society of 10 rupees.
so you are reading under the 10 rupees note, right? So what does
Yes.
this paper currency have? This is something which is very distinctive in Indian currency. There is a particular currency which is not promising the bearer to pay anything, and that is dollars. They do not promise anything. If by any chance you get a hold of dollar, you'll be able to see that no such promise is written anywhere around it. Now, what does this paper currency say? This says that I promise to pay the bearer a sum of XYZ rupees. So by itself, it is stating that yes, I'm a bearer check and I owe my own responsibility. So here this legal and this is something which is legally mentioned by and it is signed by the RBI governor. So it is having the legal enforcement in our country. So these forms of money are something which are perfectly liquid. Whereas the demand deposits, on the other hand, are the product of banking system. They are accepted and they are taken as the form of payment, but at the same time they are optional. If someone is not ready to accept the check, they'll tell you that नहीं मुझे check नहीं चाहिए. Okay, Jay, understood. It is written in Hindi also. मैं धारक को whatever amount अदा करने का वचन देता हूँ. Okay. So when we are talking about this demand deposits, they are the product of banking system, and making and accepting payments by check is optional. One has the option to accept or not accept the payment through check. That is why they are not considered as perfectly liquid. I want to pay. Okay, this was in an ad that I saw. There was a girl who was not having any cash on hand. What she did was she asked for a bottle of milk. जो हमारी अमूल दूध की बॉटल आती है ना, she asked for that. She was given that Amul दूध bottle. It was a meme or a prank or something like that. And in return of that, now what she did was she wrote a check of $20 and gave it to the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper easily denied. No, I don't want this check of yours. Take it with yourself. देना है तो cash दो. Because we are having this liberty with ourselves that we want to accept the money in the form of demand deposits or not. So that is what is mentioned in the conventional approach. Next, we'll go with the Chicago approach. Now, what is the Chicago approach? Is there anyone who can tell me about the Chicago approach? No, it's not M2. Mr. Prem, your mic is on, beta. Can you please turn it off for us? Okay, so what is Chicago approach? Anyone? Who gave the Chicago approach? Come on, this is written on the screen. At least पढ़ के तो बोलो. Who gave the Chicago approach? आप लोग स्लाइड जो लिखी हुई जो सामने होती है वो भी रीड नहीं करते. Okay, yes, the Chicago approach is the approach which was given by Milton Friedman and his associates in the University of the Chicago University. Now, they have extended the conventional definition of money. And how they have extended, they have added the time deposit with commercial banks. So, other forms of money, that is metallic coins, paper currency, and demand deposits. They have added this time deposit with the commercial bank. So what they have done, they have basically broadened the definition of money, and this broad definition of money includes three components, three basic components, and that is the currency. Now, whenever we are talking about currency, we are talking about paper currency and coins. So what it does, it includes currency, it includes checkable demand deposits, that is checks, and the third thing that they include is time deposits with the commercial banks. See, although these time deposits that we are having with commercial bank like FDs, they are not available as a medium of exchange, but this approach that is called the Chicago approach, they had their own reasons of adding these time deposits of money in the definition. Now, the first reason which they have given is that GNP and money supply are highly correlated. And the money supply, including time deposits, has a high correlation with GNP than the money supply without it. It is they are more related as compared to them. So that is one of the reasons due to which the time deposits must be included in the definition of money. They had their own reasons. They believe that the time deposits are having a very high correlation with the gross national product. And the second one was that the time deposits and demand deposits are basically very close substitutes, because the banks make these time deposits, like whenever we are investing some money, that is what they are stating. Whenever you are investing some money for a longer period of time in the bank does not keep the entire amount to itself. What will the bank do of this amount? If the bank is not keeping the entire amount to itself, what is the bank doing of the amount? Yes, you are absolutely right. What does the bank do is the bank provides this amount as, you can say, as a loan, loan to the borrowers. So this time deposit is available to the customer after a lapse of time, that is, we can say 90 days or so. If you are making an FD, the minimum time is at least you have to make an FD for at least 3 months. So if you want the money after that, it will be made available. But this time deposits will remain unavailable for any transaction within that short period of time which you have agreed with the bank. Is there anyone in this class now who haven't made the entry for their attendance? Kids, I do not intend to change the link again. But if this keeps on continuing, I'll start disabling the link within first 10 minutes of the class. On a daily basis, I keep on telling you people that as soon as you are there in the class, make an entry. But somehow I fail to understand why don't you understand simple English? गुजराती में बोलूं तारे समझ पड़ से या हिंदी बोलूं उसमें समझ में आएगा किस भाषा में आप लोग अच्छे से बात समझ में आती है मुझे समझा दो I'll speak in that particular language only and if I do not know the language I'll try to learn it because आपको मेरी नॉर्मल बात तो समझ में नहीं आ रही okay now here what they've stated that this time deposit is something which is having a very good correlation with the GNP and moreover they're a very good substitute to the demand deposits but these are the two arguments which are not making a very strong case for the definition or we can say the Chicago approach. There's another argument is having the which provides support to the Chicago approach and that is the banks do not keep the cash idle. There is a cash reserve ratio. The amount which is required for that cash reserve ratio is kept by the bank. Amount, the remaining amount is given by the bank to the borrower as a loan. The major portion of time deposits basically returns to the circular flow of money in the economy. And that is why it can be included in the definition of money. Based on this argument, you can include time deposit in the circulation of money. But if you are including the time deposit in circulation of money with reference to the guys, just give me a second. Okay, thanks. So, with respect to the third argument, that is, we are providing this for loan, we can add this money to the definition of, we can add that time deposits to the definition of money. Now, third approach is the Gurley Shaw approach. Now, what was the full name of these authors? What was the full name of these authors? Who have the authors that attributed to this approach? What was the full name of them? It was John G. Gurley and Edward S. Shaw. Now, if we are recalling this Chicago school approach, what they have added is they've added the time function because it works as a very good substitute for the demand deposits. It includes the and by providing a very good substitute, this time they have stated that this time deposits can be included in money. Now, what does this Gurley Shaw approach do is it takes us a step ahead. Now, what they are doing, they're recognizing the asset function of the financial claims which are made against the non-banking financial intermediaries also. And here they are emphasizing that there is a close relationship between the currency, demand deposits, commercial bank time deposits, saving bank deposits, savings and loans, association shares, and etc. etc. and etc. Now, all of which, if you are viewing by the public view as an alternate to liquid money or the liquid value, then they can be included in money. So, according to this Gurley Shaw approach, money supply is something which should be defined with the respect of this weighted sum of currency, that how much weightage is which format having. Weighted now they are trying to define this with the weighted sum of currency, demand deposits, with all the deposits that have claim against the financial intermediaries that can be treated as a substitute of currency, and weightage of the demand deposits. Basically, what Galisho is trying to say that if there is money anywhere in the market, that should be included. May it be in the form of demand deposits, commercial bank deposits, time deposits, some borrowings, some shares, everything should be included. Now, when we are theoretically looking at this sort of definition, we do not find any flaw with it. When we are reading the definition, we are able to say that, they are including everything. This is very good. Can't we say that? That as all sorts of money are included in it, this definition seems to hold its grounds very properly, and it is good, right? But when we are going for the empirical claim, or when we are going for the practical claim of this definition, there is where the difficulty lies. Because like it was equally difficult for us to provide proper standards for commodity money, the same problem lies over here also. And the problem is that it is equally difficult to assign appropriate weights. You cannot provide weightage to different forms of money. So that is the problem which is always there. Just a second. I think some of you are facing some internet issues because the number of the class is constantly fluctuating. Okay. Now, when we are talking about Galisho approach, except the illustrative purpose, there was no further attempt which was being made in order to provide any sort of weighted sum to the definition. So the concept is not used for testing any sort of monetary theory or for carrying out any monetary policy, but it is there. So we can treat it as one of the legitimate approaches. Last one is the central bank approach. Uh, I just want to request you people one thing, and that is that from the next lecture, that is, we are having a lecture tomorrow also. If you want to continue with the lecture, you are requested to please put up your attendance on time, because this time and again entry of your names and numbers is something which I do not appreciate. Coming to the main page in order to check whether you are able to understand things or not, and then I just find that people are making entry of their names and numbers. To be very clear, make this entry when you are entering the class. And if you are entering the class after 9:25, after the first 25 minutes of the class, don't bother to make an entry. बिकॉज क्लास में आने आने का एहसान आपको मुझ पर करने की जरूरत बिल्कुल नहीं. This is something which you are doing for yourself. Everyone is getting education for their own self. They're not making any favor, or they're not causing any favor to me. मुझे जितना पढ़ना था मैं पढ़ चुकी, और जो अगर मुझे आगे भी पढ़ना होगा, I'll keep on studying, and that will be for myself. I'll not be doing any favor on you. So the same stands for you also. From now on, if you are coming to the class after 25 minutes, I do not want to see the name and the number. बार बार प्यार से समझा समझा के परेशान हो चुकी हूँ, ये हरकतें मत किया करो, मत किया करो, बट you guys are not able to understand things. Either you are not making an effort to understand it. We are available online, we are at our own places, we are at our own homes. So no matter what you say, it is not gonna come to our ears. हम तो वही सुनेंगे जो कि हमें सुनना है. See, still, this is like upfront disobedience. Very good, Binoy. Go on. So I'll just complete the central bank approach, and then you are done for the day. The central bank has taken a view which is broader to the money supply. The reason is that the central bank are those people who are most interested with the controlling and regulating of any sort of credit flow in the country or in an economy. Now, in order to accomplish this task, they need to formulate and implement a suitable monetary policy so that they can achieve whatever predetermined objectives they have set for themselves. Now they are the central banks, and they view all the suitable and the available means of payments or credit flows of the money. And for this purpose, the money supply will always consist of the currency plus all realizable assets. As per the central bank, money is something which will always be currency plus the realizable assets. Now, what are these realizable assets? These are the assets that can be converted into money at a person's will. That is, the assets which are either perfectly liquid or are nearly perfect to liquid. They can be calculated as money. Nothing else can be included. So, as per the central bank, money is something which is money plus something that can be converted into money at the will. And this is the approach which was accredited by the Radcliffe Committee of US. They are someone who emphasizes that the similarity between currency and other realizable assets or means of purchasing, and to the point of rejecting money in favor of some broader concepts, because what they believe is that they have to make the money measurable as compared to an immeasurable. By adding all the concepts to money, what is happening? The money is becoming immeasurable. So they have accepted the central bank's approach, and according to this approach, the money is in a way the total credit flow to the borrowers. That is what money is. Whatever the bank or the economy is able to give to the borrower can be termed as money. And depending on the objective of the monetary policy and monetary targets, the central bank has used different measures of money supply. And these different measures are named as M1, M2, M3, and M4. Now, what is this M1, M2, M3, and M4? That we will consider later in this unit. That is basically it is the last part of the unit, so we'll consider it at that point of time. So you are done for the day. You may, if anyone is having any doubt, they're requested to put up the questions. Everyone else can. And if you cannot respect the teachers, please don't say thank you or good morning or goodbye. That is not required. Respect is the basic thing which is required, which I don't think I'll be able to get in this class.